Hey folks, I'm here with my buddy Chad. We're at the Red Crest Major League Fishing Expo in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and each of us were blessed.
Very.
We got some of the first BlackPak Pros. This is Chad's, and you just got yours
Just got mine last night.
Yeah. So.
And I stayed up jacking around with it in the hotel 2 hours after Christy went to sleep.
Right.
Just because I was honestly blown away. I'm going to be honest with you guys. I have had a lot to do with the product development of most YakAttack products.
Yep.
I've been the driving force behind a lot of, you know what you guys need to make? But I got to fall on the sword here and say, I never saw the BlackPak until it was in the new BlackPak, until it was in the final stages of development. I happened to be going through Virginia. Luther invited me to sit in on a meeting. And so the design team, Luther, John, everybody was there. And I had nothing. Like normally I'm like, oh, do this, do that. When I saw the semi-finished product at that time, I had nothing.
They
nailed it. But on top of that, and this is the part where I say I got to fall on the sword, I don't know that I would have ever pushed to upgrade the BlackPak. I've had no issues with the original BlackPak. And it's one of those things where that's why Luther and the team at YakAttack are who they are, is because they're constantly looking to build that better mousetrap.
But they pump all of the anglers that they work with for how do we do this?
Yep.
What are the problems? What are the problems? What are the solutions that you think would be in the next one?
And part of the problem for me, or part of the problem for me is I kind of am really good at rigging and I'm really good at overcoming, things. And so I've always mounted stuff to the sides of my BlackPak, and I've always worked to, work around things to make it better.
Yep.
What I love about this BlackPak is you don't have to. The screw bosses are there for any type of configuration. One question that I get asked a lot, and this is probably something, again, I wouldn't have come up with because I'm not a real leash or tether guy, because I don't like to have to reach back, grab the rod, and then disconnect something. But I do understand the person who says, I want my stuff secured in case I flip my kayak. I want my stuff secured so when I'm going down a river and I happen to catch my rod on a line, it doesn't pull it out of the tube. Last week or 2 weeks ago in Florida, I was paddling and I had my paddle in the double header, and the wind caught it, the nose caught, and I was running with the motor, and the tip of the paddle went in the water, and the back end literally caught my rod in the AR tube and flipped it up in the air. And luckily I was towing my buddy Chris Musinski back because the weather had gotten bad, and he caught my rod. Otherwise, it was this rod right here. Yep. It was a Shimano Metanium on an NRX, which of course is the most expensive rod I've owned and that I'll ever own, and that would have been the rod that I lost. And so the tether tube concept, straight up, falling on the sword, nothing I would have ever come up with.
So let's go feature by feature. We're going to start with the tether tube and work through all of the features on the box. I'm going to grab the camera off the tripod. You're going to start with the tether tube.
Okay, perfect. All right, so first and foremost, the tube is awesome. In fact, I'm a big fan of the AR rod tubes just from the standpoint of the way that they work. If you notice here, a bait caster sits in there and locks in nice and clean, nice and easy. But for you guys that throw a spinning rod more than anything else, the spinning rods lock into there perfectly.
That's me.
But the part that makes the tether tube, the tether part.
What do you refer to them as? Egg beaters?
We call them fairy wands or princess poles. You know what I mean? My son, Austin, when he was little, said, a kid asked him, says, how come you don't fish with a spinning rod? He said, because I know how to cast. So anyway, if you look here, this is what makes the tether tube a tether tube, is they have an integrated tether built into the tube. The bungee is tied into the back of the tube, so when you screw it to the side of your BlackPak,
pull it up.
It's locked in. But literally, it's got a bungee. It nests nice and clean right here in the ready to lock position, or you can pull it off to the side if you don't lose it and hook it into this tether shaft that they have on the side of both sides of the tube. But here's how easy it is to lock your rods in and how easy it is to get them out. You just take that and hook it around the shaft of the rod. On a bait caster, you can actually come up and hook it around the reel handle, which makes it nice and easy to grab when you reach back to grab that rod and pull it off. And then you can leave it in the easy to grab position to where when you reach back, you can just hook it on the rod shaft just like that, or you can pull it over to the side and stow it. again, one of those things that I don't know that I would have ever pushed for as a product, because I don't like leashes, because I don't like taking a really nice sensitive rod and then having something attached to it that throws the balance off. And then I've honestly never been able to come up with a really cool way to secure your rod that didn't also create a bigger entanglement problem, which is the other thing that I've always kind of been against. If you ever flip your kayak, or the situation where you're worried about your stuff being secured, having too many leashes and lanyards and stuff, where when all the stuff comes out of your boat, you're basically swimming in a bowl of spaghetti of potential entanglement.
I got a story about that.
Okay.
And it's when I certified for being an ACA instructor, and I had a paddle leash, and the instructor, Tom McEwen, who's like this world-renowned whitewater guy, like one of the first guys to run Great Falls in the Potomac on the border of Maryland, Virginia. He grabs the paddle leash, takes it around my neck like this, and whispers in my ear, "This is what the river's gonna do to you."
Well, I've got a harder-headed story about a paddle leash and why I don't use one. I was on the eastern shore of Virginia.
Yeah.
Myself and Kevin Whitley, Kayak Kevin, had been...
It's hard to think of the last name because it's Kayak Kevin.
Kayak Kevin. We had been finding these redfish up in these shoals. So I had decided to go over there on a day when I didn't take a buddy, which I highly recommend you don't do. But I go in, and what you would do is you would basically punch through the surf, the little breakers in the shoals, get up in the middle, and you would cast half a crab into the surf, and these monster redfish would eat it. So then what you would do is you would basically put your rod in the rod holder, and as the redfish was pulling you out into the main channel, you would surf the wave in. So at the time, I had bought this really cheap saltwater reel from Bass Pro Shop, the Ocean Runner series, and I'd been using it for a couple of weeks, and I'm riding this wave, and I've let the drag out, and the redfish is running, and it's actually pulling line faster than I'm riding the wave, and the reel locked up. And when the reel locked up, the redfish was going slightly off to the right. It pulled the nose down, the reel locked, and you don't think about this when you're in the situation, but this is how you end up killing yourself in a really benign situation. These shoals are only like 2 or 3 feet deep.
Right.
So what happened is when the rod locked up, it pulled the nose of my boat down, and back then the boats were so sharp on the tip, it caught the sand, and I ended up doing like a 16-foot, because now the wave is pushing on the back, pole vault. Well, I was smart enough at the time to turn my paddle sideways, or so I thought, because I didn't want to get T-boned when the paddle hit the surf.
Sure.
Well, what happened was when I turned it sideways like the whitewater guys do, as soon as I hit forward, the paddle swept around me, and luckily back then I had made my paddle leashes out of these exercise bands that you stretch with.
Snap.
And I'd made a loop on each one of them. Well, luckily, that thing had been laying out in the sun for so long that it was dry rotted, and I was underwater with a paddle leash wrapped around my body and my neck, and I was able to grab a hold to it and pull, and it broke. If it hadn't have been old and it hadn't have been dry rotted, I wouldn't be sitting here telling you the story, because I literally would have drowned. So I've been adverse to leashes and lanyards and things like that. I do love the one from Rogue because it's got the little clip in it where you can disconnect it. So you can use it when you're running or doing something where it's out of your way, so you don't worry about your paddle inadvertently getting knocked off your boat. But when you're actively paddling, you just disconnect it, and then the leash is not connected anymore. So I've been adverse to leashes. This right here,
good.
Well,
This
and it's so good. And what I'm looking forward to is adding a couple of extra tubes. You know, we've got these so early that these tubes are actually 3D printed. Next week, the first production run happens, and we'll be able to put more tubes on there. But I'm looking forward to putting like my Boga grip in there and just taking this clip and clipping it on there.
Right.
And putting other things in there. Like, I'm seriously considering just taking one of my camera poles, cutting the end of it off and sliding it into the tube, and then you could just hook that hook right above the phone. Here's what else is crazy. So Jeff has had his BlackPak a little bit longer than me, and the first thing that I thought of was this right here.
I've had it 36 hours, and you've had it 12.
Yeah. So, you know, it's still a little bit longer. But this right here, this 90-degree option, doesn't just work with the lock and load system, but with the YakAttack's 90-degree mounts and all. The world is this is literally Legos for adults. YakAttack itself is Legos for adult, but this is like next level Legos. You can configure and reconfigure.
Let's go ahead and talk about that. Is each one of these holes leads to, on the other side, a solid screw boss. And then there's a screw boss that leads to what's solid there. And that's all I've done here with this particular, I mean, and I didn't have my tools. I grabbed the Phillips head screwdriver, a 4-inch section of gear track, slapped it on there.
And it comes with the self-tappers.
Yeah, put a lock and load base on it, and I'm good to go. With, you know, with really minimal, I just wanted to see if it would happen, you know. And I think the other options for this, here, I'm gonna hand this to you. What I envision is having like gear pouches, the kind of tackle webs type stuff. I'm definitely gonna get more in the way of the horizontal rod storage. I'm not as, and I'll leave these on there, and I'll do things like what Chad said with the boga grip and pliers. But I like my rods pointed back because I go under docks, under limbs. Like I want the low clearance option, and I know I'm going to build out, you know, an Omega here, an Omega Pro there, and they're both going to be rods pointed back. I can do that with this without interfering with the clearance of the lid. You know, that's, you know, because I can build onto the side with these, you know. Let's get the...
Look at this. I was thinking about this last night, and luckily you already have the thing on the side. But look at this right here, guys. You'd literally just throw an AR style rod tube on there, and you could put 3 or 4 of them across there. You get into the scenario where you've got this in the 16x16, which will be out in June. You could put 4 of those across there on one gear track, and you can have all your rod holders to where you can have them either vertical or you can lay them flat, and it's still out of the way of the lid. Now, I've not had a problem with the lid.
Let's jump over to the catch latch. You know, and the lid.
Close it back for a second so people can actually see how that works.
It's not totally intuitive the first time you grab it. Like the first time I came up to it, and it was like, okay, what am I doing? But it's index finger there, thumb there, and it opens, right? What's cool is, I mean, it for sure, it secures everything in there, and the lid on the old one, when you push it back, it has a stop now, so it's going to stay there. It isn't something where it flops behind, where you're in your kayak seat up here, and you're going like, I need to get that back there, and like kneeling on your seat, so you're like, give me that lid and pull it back. That was me with the old one.
Or more importantly, you flop it over and it hits the boat and makes a bunch of noise.
Fish, absolutely. But and the other thing is that it's, you know, this is tension, so you're gonna open it, and it's not slamming down on you. It's not like I'm trying to get in there and it's trying to munch my arm up. It's tension. So,
well, the other thing that's pretty cool about it that's not immediately obvious is that on the inside of the lid there's a channel, and on the inside, on the top of it, there's a bevel. So when this thing closes, even though it's not gasketed, it's actually perfectly nested to where that's going to keep water out.
So these are rubber
stops. Little rubber stops in the corners on the one place where water could have gotten in. So you're pretty much now going to go to a waterproof lid.
So 25% lighter, and we got more rubber stops.
And the cool thing about these is they're actual rubber. So they're going to grip the plastic of your boat, the traction pads if you have.
It's going to keep it from sliding around.
Make it quieter.
Yeah.
You know?
All of that. The stealth is awesome, for sure.
All right, so one of my favorite things about the original BlackPak is that the YakAttack system has these Omni Hooks that go onto the Bonafide kayaks, but the E-bracket right here was designed for this, but it never quite fit perfectly because the bungee that makes your lid operate occupies the same space, so you always kind of had to finagle it to get it down in there, and the angle of the bungee was offset to the point where this was at a pull angle, and then over time, I've never had it happen, but I've seen people who had their E-bracket break on the top of their BlackPak and they had to replace it. So with the Omni corner hooks, now that Omni corner bracket, now this is perfectly aligned for the pull of the bungee. It's a little bit wider, and that Omni hook fits into that slot perfectly to secure your gear. If you come around this side, you'll see what Jeff has done here. So if you're fishing an inflatable, if you're fishing a boat that doesn't have Omni hooks, Or if you just want to come up with your own way of doing it, you can put a strap with a clip, you can put a strap with a bracket, or you can just use your old school bungee hooks and just hook them right onto the corner bracket. So those corner brackets allowing you to secure your bag, your box into the boat is pretty cool. What I've seen a lot of people do over the years is use 2 of them to secure the boat and then use the other 2 to secure seats or other stuff. So you can pick up Omni Hooks as a aftermarket product. Originally, they were only available on the Bonafide kayaks, but because they're a YakAttack product, you can pick up the Omni Hooks, untie the bungee in your tank well, reroute it by putting the Omni Hooks in the corner, and then when you put your BlackPak in there, you literally just clip it into the corner. Now, Jeff and I got the early prototype versions of this, but it's my understanding from the spec sheet that the pack is going to come with the Omni Hooks so that you can put them into the Omni brackets to secure your BlackPak into place. So this BlackPak is honestly, the gridlock system is what makes it, in my opinion. If you're an AR person, of the different systems with Picatinny and keyhole and things like that. Well, this is, in my opinion, this is that evolution for kayak fishing. I feel like this gridlock pattern, this gridlock system is going to turn into the gold standard in the way that you secure things to your boat. When you have the rigging brain like I do, this right here has already got me going crazy in what the future options are. The cell block was already a step in that direction, but now when you take these lighter weight panels and you make products out of it like this, I can only imagine that on the inside in here where you have the flip side of the gridlock, satchels, packages, tackle organizers, things that are going to really make your BlackPak as customizable as you want it to be. Just like the AR platform rifles, right? It's Legos for adults, like I've said before. But this is the part that's really going to make a lot of people who avoided the BlackPak in the past or who didn't get the BlackPak because it didn't fit their tackle boxes. So if you look here, Jeff has got the all-new series of lures called the Crank Jerk. But more importantly, if you get these oversized Flambeau or
so that's a 37.
These Plano oversized 3700 boxes,
yep,
they fit. They fit in there without any modification. I've seen people cut the top bracket on their BlackPak. I've seen people completely take it off to fit these bigger size boxes in there. And I've always just worked around it by putting these boxes either on the side of my BlackPak or in my junk drawer in my seat or storing them somewhere else.
Let's look
having
at,
the option,
bring them over.
Throw these.
This is what where we're coming from.
Yeah. So the situation with the old BlackPak is it didn't fit in there, no matter how you tried to do it. So my workaround has always been that I just went with the smaller boxes, so I didn't have to worry about it. But having the ability to use these Plano Edge and these oversized 3700 size Flambeau or whatever manufacturer you choose to use is huge. And one of the drawbacks, if you want to call it that, to these Plano Edges is that the lip has a tendency to pop open. Well, the reason that it has a tendency to pop open is if it can move around too much. So what I like about this thing is the over center lock is nice and secure, but if you happen to hit it, the lid just doesn't pop open and your stuff go everywhere. But the cool thing about how it fits into the BlackPak where it doesn't fit here, the cool thing about the way it fits in the new BlackPak is there's no room for it to open up and spill, even if you happen to pop that open like so. So if you reach down the box and grab it and you inadvertently pop that latch, you can still pull it out of there and you haven't spilled your contents.
So this is a 3600 size and it fits, as opposed to the 37 that fits sideways, the 36 fits, and how many can you get across
I'm
there?
glad you mentioned that, because all of a sudden, one of the ways that I was thinking is I've had a few of these that I just haven't used yet. So what I'm thinking I'm going to do is I'm going to set my tackle up where I use the 3600 this way because they can stand up on end, and then my one oversized 37 on that end. That's going to really secure my gear and my tackle nice and clean into the BlackPak. It's going to get rid of the slop. And when I say by slop is I do a lot of stand-up fishing. And inevitably, if you stand up fishing, you move your feet, you're going to have some boxes flopping around on the inside of the BlackPak. So I've always put things in my BlackPak like a dry bag that I roll up just to capture some air in it, just to take up that extra space so it doesn't move around. But with this grid lock system, you're going to be able to put bungee dividers in there. There's probably, if I'm guessing, because I know YakAttack, they've probably already got 15 things in. If I know YakAttack like I do, they probably already have 15 things in the works.
If let's look at the literature. It hints to it right here. The last, under the riggability, read the last sentence there.
Yeah, this gives our design team a platform for which they can design a myriad of dividers, holders. Exactly. So, like we said,
development of these accessories
is already underway. So, again, I didn't even have to read the spec sheet to know that they were already on it. But more importantly, it's going to allow you to do a lot of that stuff yourself. You could just take a simple piece of webbing or bungee or Velcro and use screws to screw it into place, and now you can customize the inside of this BlackPak for yourself. But what's also really cool about this is you're not drilling through it, so you still maintain that waterproof integrity. And if you happen to put something there, let's say that you're like me and Jeff and you're going to rig this thing up, or Jeff and I. If you're like Jeff and I and you rig this thing up, and then 6 weeks later or 8 weeks later or a month or 2 months later, YakAttack comes out with something, and you go, oh damn, I wish I would have waited. Well, you just take the screws out and put the new thing in there.
No holes.
And so not only is it customizable, but it's recustomizable. Man, this thing is like what Buzz Lightyear said when my kids were young, to infinity and beyond.
Right. So let's look at this. So this is what we have right now. Available April 8th. This is the giant size, which is, you know, it's going to come out again, what, another 3 inches or so. I mean, that's a hoss. That's a big box.
So this is your Native Titan, your Hobie Pro Angler, your guys that have the big Old Town Autopilot 136s. These guys that have always wanted these bigger boxes that have room for like 12 rod holders, you know, 3 on each side. And then here's what's really cool about this. I'm excited about this thing because I just rebought one of my original Wilderness Systems Commanders. And what I hated about that boat is the tank well wasn't really big enough to put a smaller box in, and this is perfect for that. And now that you've got boxes, you've got boats like, turn the camera back up for Jeff real quick. There's a boat that I've wanted something like this for, and that is the EX123 from Bonafide. That's the perfect grab and go boat, and it has a tank well that's got a hatch, so they call it a hatch well. Well, putting a big oversized BlackPak on top of that, it's not practical, but this little dude right here is going to be perfect for that. But Jeff, I'm going to tell you straight up, I already know what's going to happen. I'm
going to have like 3 of those.
Not only that, but I'm going to tell you what's going to happen. The guys that really love this thing are actually going to end up with one of these and one of these. They're going to have this one in the boat sideways and this one behind it long ways. Yeah. So then you're going to be able to truly have as much gear storage and gear capacity as you can possibly stand in the back of your kayak. So
my take on it is I'm constantly in this flux of accumulating too much stuff and then dumping the BlackPak out and starting over and accumulating too much, and to me, oh, this is just dangerous. Like, this is me sinking, you know, a kayak that's too small.
You know, it is, but for tournament anglers that are fishing changing conditions and frontal situations and things like that.
Dude, you and I know, we fish, I mean, on this trip, I will have gone for steelhead, walleye, river smallmouth, and some big Texas/Louisiana largemouth. Like, I'm a little bit all over the place, multi-species, and it's tough. That's where I'm saying, if I have one that's a smallmouth box, one that's a striped bass box, one that's a largemouth box, and then I don't have to like force one box to do everything. I can have a species-specific box, or even an inshore, redfish and specks. I mean, and then I'm not carrying so much
800 pounds of stuff
and digging through stuff to get to the 2 or 3 things that I know. Yeah, that's what I'm going to end up throwing anyway.
I think this thing is going to be the perfect 1-2 punch to complement my junk drawer underneath my seat, and then have what's readily available, what I know I'm going to be using that day, right there at arm's reach, where I can just pull the drawer out, but then have that stuff that I need, the seconds of everything, the backups, that seasonal pattern that may present itself because the weather's changing back here in the back. And then also throwing a little bit of extra gear, jackets and lunch boxes and things like that back there.
Yep.
It's going to make this box the ultimate.
So let's wrap this up. 13 by 16 available April 8th, 16 May 9th, and 13 by 13. Gotta wait to June for that one. Anything else you want to add?
Honestly, man, again, this is one of those products that I never would have really pushed for because I've been so happy with the original BlackPak that it's just fit my way of fishing, and I've also adapted my way of fishing to it. So this thing right here is, man, it's one of the few products that's come out in the last few years that's got me really excited and got the brain like a gerbil on the wheel in there again of all the different things. All I've got to do is resist the urge to just start sticking too much crap on it. That's really what it boils down to, is it's going to lend itself to over-rigging. But I'd rather have the option to over-rig it than to fall short of what you need in a tackle management system. So yeah, guys, check out the BlackPak Pro and all of the available accessories over the next couple of months. I think it's going to be a game changer for kayak fishing.